Everybody can see my screen and hear my voice. If you can't, please raise your hand and let Michael know if there's any issue. Otherwise, we'll dive right in. We have up on our website and our YouTube channel lots and lots of in-depth videos on Tesla Powerwalls that we've done over the last couple of years, including a bunch that fresh ones that we put up there from our customers' perspective. So we interviewed customers. So there's lots of additional videos if you'd like to dive in. We're going to kind of focus this. We're going to go over Powerwall. We're going to go into some of the things that are new recently within the last, say, 6 months or so, and then talk about what we see happening in the market and going forward with Tesla and with similar type of solutions. As Michael said, we're about a 90-person firm focused completely on solar and battery storage solutions here in the Northwest. We have offices here in Seattle and down in Portland, Oregon. We cover all of Washington, all of Oregon. We love this stuff. Our mission is very similar to that of Tesla, where we want to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. We believe the future is powered by renewable energy, and whether it's residential, commercial, utility scale, we help everything from utilities to families design, install, and support those systems throughout the Northwest. So thank you very much for attending. Why solar? Why renewable energy? Seattle is got a pretty clean grid. Washington has a fairly clean grid. We still do coal. We still have lots of natural gas. But the reality is 80% of our economy is still fossil fuel based. We are completely reliant upon natural gas and petroleum products throughout our economy. So as we transition transportation, home heating to, as we electrify those, we're going to need to double, triple, maybe even quadruple the amount of electricity that we use. So decentralized generation is going to become very important. So why solar? People ask all the time, does it work here in the Northwest? Most people are surprised when we say we outproduce Hawaii spring, summer, and fall. Yes, they in the winter, our production is much lower and they beat us overall, but we have a great solar resource here in Washington. Germany is 33% solar, and they're further north than we are. Why even consider it? First and foremost, people have different motivations, but I like to look at it from a financial standpoint. I get 26% of your system is paid back through a federal tax credit. So you get that money back as a refund or as a, you don't have to send in additional money. Zillow recently did a research study in several major metropolitan areas, and they found that homes with solar increased by 4.1%. We do a lot of work for builders. They say the homes sell faster and they sell for more with solar already on it. And I like, from a financial standpoint also, it's part of your portfolio. It is essentially a zero risk with a 7% annual ROI, so a 7% annual return on your investment for the lifetime of the system. And that's assuming very conservative, utility rates going up by 4%. What happens if they go up by 7, 8%? We're witnessing now what happened down in, here in the Northwest. Oregon had 130,000 people without power. Texas had 4 million people without power. So we had a lot of people without power. So it adds additional utility to you from a peace of mind standpoint. I'm not going to go into this in depth, but solar, roughly most people spend between $20,000 and $30,000, but then you take that big tax credit out of it and utility savings, and it's a great investment. Think of taking that money and putting it in a bond on your roof. It's going to get you 7% year over year. The first year, it's like 30%, 26 plus your utility savings, and then just a nice return after that. With a 25-year warranty on the panels, 25-year warranty on the inverter or inverters, it's there. The increase in your home value is roughly equal to the cost of the system. So really, day one, after you get your tax credit applied, you're right there. Why energy storage? What we hear from our clients, really, number one is resilience, backup power from your home. I'm actually going to just throw this up here. I found this great site, poweroutage.us, showed power outages after the recent polar vortex. So 5.1 million people without power across the US. If those people would have had solar, battery system, and electric heat, they would have been fine. They might have had to conserve, turn it down a little bit, but everything would have kept on running. If you had gas, it stopped working. The gas system kind of froze up. They didn't have enough in the system. So an all electric home in any of these areas would have done much, much better. Second, increased independence. Just some people are like, I just don't wanna, I wanna be able to use my solar at night. So we call that solar self-consumption. Third is kind of environmental, with the destabilization of things like the this polar vortex. What else is coming? We need to transition and protect my family. And then finally, we don't have them here in Washington. Oregon has a optional time of use rate, but in most metropolitan areas, there is more expensive power during certain times of the day. Usually in the afternoon is the peak usage, 3 to 7 p.m., and you might see rates double or triple. At that point, you could use your stored solar to offset those higher costs. We don't have those here today. Really, it's all about backup power. One of our clients here just posted this not too recently. Apparently the power went out here at 4 a.m. He's on Bainbridge Island and it's still out. The best thing is we didn't even notice. So here in Washington, we have the same challenges that both California and even now Texas, kind of funny enough, massive winter outages, ice storms, snowstorms, windstorms. We also have droughts that may affect our production from out of our dams. Just like California, we are very reliant on power coming over the Cascades from all the hydroelectric in Eastern Washington. With fires there, which we have had transmission lines knocked out before. If we had a really bad drought and then fires, we'd see this very similar things to the public safety power shutoffs, they call them. And then finally, the big one is earthquakes. That's really kind of that was my impetus really to really dive into energy storage. Was I just after going through earthquake here and just thinking through what that would mean for my family, I wanted to really dive in and make sure we had a good solution. I'm going to stop periodically for questions, and then I'm trying to leave a lot of room at the end. You guys sent in some great questions, and I want to go over those. So there's a lot of information here. We'll make this video available so you can read it in more detail. But Tesla Powerwall has, for us, been the #1 selling by a long shot. The main reason I think that was really out of the gate, we could use it for small, medium, large, and extra large sites. So it was very scalable. Not the most flexible solution, but if we're within the bounds, if you know all the engineering requirements, we could make it work just about anywhere. And they just work. We have hundreds of these installed all over the Northwest, and they just work. So Tesla Powerwall, it's a battery and battery inverter in one. Each Powerwall has 5 kilowatts, so that's roughly 5 microwaves running at one time that it can output. It can actually go further than that, up to 7 kilowatts out of each one. So as you stack them, you can have more and more power. We can have up to 10 of them on a 200 amp service, so that's a lot of power, a lot of storage. The average for us is 2 or 3, very common. 13.5 kilowatt hours. think of a kilowatt hour like a microwave on for 1 hour. That's how much energy it is. So it's roughly 13.5 hours of a 1,000 watt microwave going. Tesla charges, and they actually enforce this in their software. It charges from solar if you have it, or the grid, but not both. So you can arbitrage. If we did have time of use, you could arbitrage rates. Spring, summer, and fall, no problem. In the winter, more challenging. We do a lot of these. We've installed them with solar systems as old as, we're 14 years old. So some of our very first installations, we're pairing Powerwalls with it. So it's great for retrofits of existing. Really, we found no solar system, name the inverter or microinverter brand, we've installed it and works quite well. One thing it does not have is no generator charging of the batteries is supported. We can install it and integrate a generator so that we can run loads in the house, and then the Powerwalls will recharge from solar. All the loads will be run from the generator in most cases. Like maybe during the day, you charge up the Powerwall from what solar you have. If it's a sunny day, it charges them up right away and you can run all the loads. But for long winter outages, we need to talk about what your goals are, what your expectations are. The most common thing that we do is we back up a 200 amp panel, 200 amp service in a home. If you have 2 or 3 panels, we usually can pick one of them. We move circuits, we back up that panel. It's completely automatic. And I actually recorded some videos. We can show you those towards the end of what it looks like when there's an outage. If you want, we can back up more than one 200 amp, but it essentially is a separate system. So 2 Powerwalls on that panel, 2 Powerwalls on the next panel. I'm also going to talk a little bit about some features. We have been testing, validating a new system from SolarEdge, their new energy hub. We're quite excited about it because it brings the same level of scalability and even more flexibility to a lithium-ion battery system. We pair it with 1 of 2 battery packs. LG is the one that's on the market today. We've had very good luck with this, but with this next version, they're adding a 200 amp backup, and we're gonna go into that in a little bit more, just to as an example of an alternative if Tesla Powerwall didn't work out for you.
Hey, TJ?
Both systems. Yep.
Hey, there was an audience question, and maybe you're getting to this, but space can be an issue for where to install this stuff. Can you talk about what kind of space requirements there are for these?
I think that's my 2 slides from here. Happy to go into it. Battery, if it's paired with solar, battery systems do qualify for a 26% federal tax credit. If you don't have any solar, we do have to charge you sales tax in Washington, and you wouldn't get that federal tax credit. So almost everybody installs battery systems with some solar, but just to know, you don't have to have solar. If your site doesn't have that ability, but you still want to have battery backup, it's doable. Kind of went over these specs. These are readily available all over, so I won't go into them, but your question was, where are they installed? You can see they're floor or wall mounted, indoor or outdoor, but here in the Northwest, we really recommend that the Powerwalls be indoor. Like any battery, it wants to keep itself in kind of a zone. Even though they say it'll go down to -4 to 122, it'll definitely discharge. We've had them down into single digits, I think, and they discharge just fine. But then they have to warm themselves in order to take a charge. And sometimes you might not have enough solar really to keep it warmed up to be able to do that. So I just showed examples here. So here's a single, can be mounted on the wall or on the floor against a wall. They're always against something. Here's a dual, a twin Powerwall on a wall as well. Here's a triple. We can stack them up to 3 deep against a wall. And then this is a quad, so this is 2x2, and there's some metal in the back that attaches to the wall, but we had to move it out a little bit just to be able to get some wiring in there. So hopefully that answers your question. How many can you do easily? Almost all of our systems are 2 to 4. If you want to go for more than that, we certainly can. The largest we've done is a 10 Powerwall system, so it scales very nicely. So you can start with one, you can add additional, but really recommend figuring out what do you need long-term, because all of that work to do the engineering and design and rolling trucks and getting permits, it really makes sense to do whatever it is that you need for the next 10 years, because they're warranted for 10 years, probably last, I'm guessing 15 plus. Any other questions yet, Michael?
Oh, sure, there's plenty here. Folks have been definitely engaged, and there's some questions that have been asked prior to the webinar beginning. Let's see if I can pick one that's kind of appropriate for your timing here. Actually, this is great for what you have on screen. This person, Philip from Washington, has seen conflicting information on how many Powerwalls it would take to support an appliance that's on a 30 amp breaker, which is in his case, a water heater or a car charger. What's the deal? What's the real deal there?
Yeah, so there's actually, Tesla has requirements, and then there are some national electric code requirements that the inspectors are going to look at when they go to inspect the system. So a single Powerwall from Tesla's perspective and the inspectors is they look at it. If you have a 30 amp breaker, if we're backing up a 30 amp breaker, that's the largest breaker, then we need at least one Powerwall in order to back it up, because that's roughly, it's 29.56 amps, so it's 30 amps. It can cover that breaker. If you had a 40 amp breaker, you need 2 Powerwalls. Now there's other things that go into that as well. For instance, if you had a say a 11 or 12 kilowatt solar system, now there's a requirement from Tesla to maintain your warranty that you can only put so much solar against a Powerwall. So say you had a 12 kilowatt system is very common for us here in the Northwest because of heating loads. If somebody doesn't have gas, in that case, you would need a minimum of 2 Powerwalls. But to back up a 30 amp breaker, a single Powerwall at base is what would be needed. But good question. When we're designing, our field designers, they're going to be talking to you about also, what do you want to do? They're going to look at what is your average daily usage in the winter? Because if your expectation is you want 3 days of backup power, we need to look to see how much are you using per day. If you're using 12, 13 kilowatt hours a day, then yeah, 3 Powerwalls would get you 3 days if there was no solar whatsoever. Solar will extend that. Spring, summer, fall, you could go from March to probably into November and never need anything other than solar and a Powerwall or 2. You'd have to conserve a little bit at night, but great generation, spring, summer, and fall. But in the winter, your panels may be covered in snow or ice, so you can't necessarily count on a lot of production. The last outage that we just had, a lot of rain, windstorm, and then we had clients out for 2-3 days, and they all made it through because it was really windy, and then one day it kind of cleared up a little bit and everybody's batteries recharged, and then they just kept on going. So it's pretty tough for us to say exactly, but we have a lot of tools to try to get you there.
Beautiful. And one maybe add-on question there, and maybe you're getting to this, but is the choice, this question's from Gary, of grid or solar to charge the Powerwall a permanent choice, or can you switch between the two? Are there scenarios?
It's mostly permanent. We'd have to come out and recommission it and maybe move your solar circuit out of the backup. So it really is mostly permanent. Now there is an exception Tesla added because we really squawked about this, was you have a storm coming in and you've been using your Powerwall for solar self-consumption, so it's down to 30 or 40%, but we have a storm coming in. So they actually did add something called Storm Watch, so that it will, when it sees a National Weather Service warning for your zip code, it will flip and allow your Powerwalls to charge from grid. We recommend in the winter just go into backup mode. And if you look at our YouTube channel, I have a very in-depth where I go through the mobile app in a lot of details. If you guys want, we have time at the end, I'm happy to dive back into that. But that's the short of it, is it's really permanent without some work. Any other good ones? I'll let you interrupt me whenever you see a good one.
You're good for now. Go ahead. Thanks.
All right. So what exactly is on the wall when you get a Powerwall system? This is probably the most common, with the exception of we usually do 2 Powerwalls just to be able to handle 40 amp heat pumps, 40 amp EV chargers, 40 amp ranges, that kind of thing. So we can back up your entire 200 amp panel. So your power comes in here through the meter. So this is existing. We then put in Tesla's backup gateway, and this is actually where all the work really is to wire this in between your panel and your meter. And this has all of the safety equipment to safely disconnect you from the grid and allow your house to have power from the Powerwall and from your solar system. So this will very quickly, a quarter of a second is what we typically see, disconnects you from the grid, tells solar and Powerwall the grid's, everything's fine, keep on working, and your loads keep getting serviced. So we add this guy and this guy. Sometimes we have to have a panel depending if it's a larger system, but this is very common where you see these 2 pieces of equipment that are new. This has all the metering, safety disconnects, breakers, places to land the Powerwalls inside of it. So we really like that. That is the new Gateway 2. The old Gateway 1 looked just like this kind of gray box, like this surface mounted panel, but it looked just like that with 2 little antennas on top. So we really like this guy. Here's a little shot of what it looks inside. Looks very much like a little mini Powerwall. This came out a few months ago and we love it. It can be semi-flush mounted, so if it's a new construction, we can put this in, into a stud bay, run wiring often behind it, so you just see it nice and clean like this, versus conduit having to be run on the surface. And it has some additional functionality that we also love. It can be used to interconnect the Powerwall, saving us from adding a combining panel. And it can be used if you want to unprotect loads that you don't want to run during an outage. For instance, you want to back up your whole house, but you have a hot tub and that thing takes, a lot of energy. That's fine. We'll just back up everything. We'll move that circuit into the panel board in that Gateway 2, and we won't back it up during an outage.
DJ.
Yep.
Great question here from a panelist that might tap right into this topic, but James asks, what about smart load shedding panels like the span panel?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you have smart load shedding panels, we can certainly look at them. There isn't any that are supported today from Tesla. They do have essentially an undocumented programming interface to potentially automate that, but it is not supported by Tesla, and we haven't tested it. We have asked Tesla for some automatic load shedding. We do have that for things like air conditioners, where we'll put in a soft start kit, or there is a relay that we can wire it in so it'll automatically shed that load. There's also some load shedders that we've tested that work well for things like, big EV chargers, so that when you're on backup and you're pulling from it, that it'll shed that load. So pretty specific, kind of general answer to that. We'd really have to talk more about it. We've talked to Span, we talked to a bunch of other companies like that. We haven't really found anything that is tightly integrated. SolarEdge is also working on something like that, but we're open. We'd love to see a good solution that's built right into panels that go into homes rather than having to retrofit them. It would be our choice. Something else that's new that we really like is the ability to control charging of Tesla vehicles during an outage. One of our concerns, 2 years ago when we first started installing them is, yeah, we can back up your EV, but what happens if there's an outage at 11 o'clock at night, you're asleep, and you just got back from a trip in, Eastern Washington or Eastern Oregon, and your Tesla is, half, it's empty, and it's going to want to charge. And we were concerned about it discharging your batteries pretty quickly. But Tesla has added the ability in the mobile app, and again, with time at the end, I'm happy to fire up the app, but I want to cover this really quick. The ability to set a reserve. So only charge my Tesla vehicle when my battery is over 90% is our recommendation. So it'll keep charging it, say during the day when there's an outage, when you have enough solar production, so it'll just keep charging. But if it hits 90%, then it stops charging. We love that. That's what we're looking for. So the $18,000 question, how much do these things cost? When we first started, Powerwalls were $5,400 and they're now $7,300. So the prices continued to go up. So it's up about 30% due to supply and high demand. The gateway is about $1,100. Fully installed in the Seattle area, we see them usually in between 18 and 21K, depending on lots of variables. But that's really what it takes to do a quality job, be able to service it, support it for the warranty period. For each additional Powerwall, 7, 8, 9,000, depending again on location and the specifics of what we're doing. And then after the federal tax credit, 26%, usually see in between 13 and 16K. If you think about that, it is a easily 10-year warranty. So you're talking a little over $1,000, $1,300 to $1,600 a year for protection. I think that's a pretty good deal. A generator, I've run lots of generators, and I think I went through 3 generators. They just don't last that long. They usually have a 1-year warranty, maybe a 2 or 3 if you get an extended, and they can die pretty quickly. Powerwalls, no moving parts. They're quiet. There's no fumes. 70 people a year die from carbon monoxide poisoning from generators. You don't have to worry about that with a lithium-ion battery system. Any questions around pricing? If not, I'll talk a little bit about the futures that we see. Tesla does not discuss unannounced products or services, but everybody wants to know what's going on. Is there a new Powerwall coming? There's these new cells? Are we going to see those in there? So currently in Powerwalls are the 2170 cells, which are the exact same cells that you see in all Tesla vehicles, all the newer vehicles, Model 3, Model Y, the new Model X, new Model 3, all 2170 cells. The new 4860 cell is significantly larger and higher energy density, and they are starting limited production on those, supposed to be sometime later this year. Those will go into things like the Tesla Semi, the Cybertruck, the Megapack, which is Tesla's utility scale battery system. And they are seeing, like others, LG, Panasonic, and others are seeing tremendous demand worldwide for cells for residential, commercial, and utility scale. So we really don't expect to see it used in Powerwalls anytime soon. Even the 2170s are very constrained right now. We used to order from the Gigafactory a container of Powerwalls at a time, and now they trickle. It's really down to a trickle because we think it's because of all of the demand for vehicles and for utility scale battery systems. Those utility scale battery systems have penalties if they don't deliver. So the demand is very high for battery backup everywhere. So if you are interested, we are still taking orders. We're putting them in order in a queue. We're installing backup gateways, and then as soon as your Powerwall or Powerwalls come in, we'll have a crew install it. We're not charging extra for that. We're just trying to keep everything moving down the road. But if you have an interest, really, my recommendation, I put my order in. I'm not going to get them anytime soon. I actually bought one from an acquaintance down in Oregon that he wasn't planning on using it. So pretty tough on the availability. So we've always are constantly looking at the market for high quality solutions so that we can provide options to our clients. Of all the systems that we've looked at, we're certified in 6-7 different systems. A lot of them we don't install anymore just because, Tesla Powerwall or SolarEdge we thought was a much better solution. So SolarEdge is the largest residential inverter manufacturer in the world. We sit on their advisory board. So we've been talking with them, giving them our feedback on what the market needs. We've been installing these for years, but we were probably 50, 75 to 1 versus Powerwalls, and we let them know why, and they have corrected it. So they are launching kind of in pieces, unfortunately. So we have some of the functionality is still kind of being staged out there, but we really love what we're seeing. It's SolarEdge's next generation solar and battery system. And I'd like to spend some time on that, but I want to kind of stop there and see if there's other Tesla specific questions. I've got 4 hours worth of content that I have, but I'm happy to answer questions before we kind of maybe switch gears a little bit and talk about something that's like Tesla as far as a solution.
Great pause there, TJ. I think there's probably a couple of wrap-up questions on Powerwall, a little bit more about future looking related to it, which I think you mostly covered, but maybe some you could take on. How about what's it going to take for Tesla cars to become the backup home energy source, given it has a huge battery under the hood already? Is that an appropriate question for the timing?
Absolutely. Actually, I was going to cover that in the next one, but I think we should jump to it and talk about it because it is a really often asked question. So today, in your Tesla vehicle, you've got your main battery pack. It's roughly a 400-volt battery pack, and that's what your electric motors use. It's 75 to 100 kilowatt hours. So it's literally like 10 Powerwall, not 10, 7 Powerwall. You're sitting on 7 Powerwalls in your car. But today you have no way other than through the little 12-volt system to get power back out of your Tesla vehicle. Now I'm going to say current Tesla vehicles. So you can certainly go and buy. I just bought my daughter. Her roommate has a used model. Is it a Model 3? And down in Oregon, they had that big power outage. I bought her a 750 watt inverter. They can plug it into the cigarette lighter and get 120 watts, but that's enough to keep their phones charged, maybe run the TV, and they could run that forever, like 40, 50 days. I haven't run the numbers, but you can run it for months for those light loads. With a set of battery clamps, you can get 750 watts. So that's more serious, if they needed to run the fridge, for instance. If it was a really, really bad situation, that's what I'd have her do, run the fridge a couple hours in the morning, couple hours at night, keep your food from spoiling. But really to integrate it into your home, there has to be a combination of things. And if you look down these blue, I kind of have these versions of it, but if you think about to have it as completely running your home, you really need bi-directional charging. So you need charging in the car. So in your car, when you plug in your Tesla at home, everybody calls the charger on the wall, that they call that the charger. Really, it's not a charger. It's just sending power. It's communicating, sending power through. In your car, there is an inverter, and that takes that AC power, it inverts it to DC and puts it into the battery pack. That has to be bidirectional. It is not currently. Engineers have kind of done teardowns. Some thought it was, some thought it wasn't. Newer ones thought it was, and then they weren't. I'm not an electrical engineer. What essentially comes out is it's not currently bidirectional, is what my understanding is. So we need to have that first and foremost. So Tesla would need to support that. They do not like the concept of it today with their current battery packs, the 2170s. They have warranties that they need to maintain. If they suddenly open that up, their concern is that, hey, you could have people living off grid and they're just hammering power in and out of that car, to the tune of, way more than mileage and the engine or the motors would do. So you got to have the technology and the support of the OEMs, bidirectional charging equipment, OEM support, that'd be like Tesla. Then to charge your home, you would also need the safety systems that meet National Electric Code. And then to put it out to the grid, you need utility policies and support. But to back up your home, which we call V2H, vehicle to home, still requires a lot of work. There is some test systems that are Nissan, Mitsubishi in Japan after the Fukushima nuclear meltdown. They had fleets of Nissan Leafs sitting there, but the generators were completely flooded out from the tsunami. If they could have run those pumps, they're just electric pumps. If they could have tapped the power in those Nissan Leafs, they said they could have avoided that disaster. So Japan passed a law that says, now if you're making vehicles for the Japanese market, they have to support bidirectional power. But the equipment for it's like the size of a fridge. So it's pretty big, so you're gonna only see it in commercial settings. We're talking to companies that are trying to miniaturize that, but we haven't been able to get hold of any equipment yet, so they're not in the market. Will it come eventually? I think you're gonna first see it in the Tesla Cybertruck. They have said that it will have a 240 volt outlet. So we could, us or any electrician can put in the safety equipment so that you don't accidentally backfeed power onto the grid. And so something like the Tesla Cybertruck could do it. There's lots of news stories about the F-150 hybrid. They have a 1 to 2, a 4 kilowatt, and then like a 7 kilowatt. To back up a home, if you think about a portable generator, those are like 5 to 7 kilowatts. If you want to actually back up a 200 amp panel, that's what you need. And you still are probably going to trip it fairly often if you're running high power stuff. But that will probably be what you see first, is this, I call it V0 off grid. Like Rivian's electric truck will have a 120 volt outlet that can be used during outages. And that has tons of stored energy in 135 kilowatt hours. So you could run fridges and lights, but you'd have to run extension cords or put in some kind of safety equipment that works with 120 volt. Vehicle to grid, we'll probably see fairly soon, but this won't provide you backup power. It's really, Europe is doing this quite a bit. It's grid tied. So that power can ebb and flow out of batteries, and they want to use it to balance the grid. So as an example, in Texas, if we would have had thousands or millions of electric vehicles that had vehicle to grid, it's very possible the grid would have stayed up longer for sure, because power could have been provided. They were sure their generators, their thermal generators and other generation wasn't enough for all of the demand. So this might have averted it, probably just extended how long. It would have been a lot less of an outage if we had this at scale. V2G. V2H, I think is it's years away, because we really don't have support of OEMs unless you want to go out and buy a Nissan or a Mitsubishi and then wait a year or two for a bidirectional charger, but that will be only to the grid. It will be grid tied. They said they were working on, that's probably another year for an off-grid version. Now, if we had, yep.
Oh, sorry. When you wrap with this, we have a couple audience questions about some other technologies too. When you're done,
let's go. Let's. I think I beat that one to death.
Okay.
Happy to go into it more. I love, this is really important for the planet. If we could harness all of the storage that are in all of the cars that we have, EVs we have today and the future, we could definitely move much more rapidly to renewable energy. Fire away, Michael.
Indeed, to say nothing about the distributed nature of all that energy. So the other questions were around some other technologies. SolarEdge, certainly one. The Generac solution has been asked about. Other battery types such as Redflow Z cells, others. I think you have some slides on that.
Yeah, so I'll use SolarEdge as a good example. So we have a fairly lengthy document that we send to Generac, to all of the companies that come to us and say, hey, we really want you to carry our solution. And what ends up happening is oftentimes there's just limitations. So we sell 400 projects here and growing. So we need solutions that can scale from entry level to very large. So we don't want to carry 5 or 6 different solutions. We want to carry 2, maybe 3 that really cover the gamut and are full featured, flexible, scalable, from vendors that we have absolute confidence are going to be around, right? Billion-dollar companies, both SolarEdge and Tesla are both billion-dollar companies. So a lot of the batteries that you might see, the drawback is that it's just a battery, right? So it's a battery pack or a battery, a case, right? It's all about the inverter. There's limitations often in the inverter and then in what it can transfer. So if you want to back up, and this is very common. I want a solar system, 10, 12 kilowatts is our standard, very average 10, 12 kilowatt system, and I want to back up my whole house. And for long winter outages, I want to be able to charge it from a generator. So those kind of things come up all the time. Tesla, we can integrate it to run loads from a generator, but not charge it today. We've asked them, hey, in your next backup gateway, have an input for me to wire in the Cybertruck, to wire in a generator, a fuel cell, whatever AC source that I have available, so I can top off my batteries if the outage is really bad. So SolarEdge has committed to that. We actually install all of the equipment for that, but the firmware for that, they say, is later this year. Generac, kind of the same thing. If SolarEdge wasn't in the market where they're at, Generac would probably be next on our list. But there's limitations there too. They don't meet all of the module level rapid shutdown requirements that NEC, so they use a third party piece of equipment that we're a little gun shy about. It doesn't scale the way we want it to in larger systems. So we think these are the 2 best systems on the market today. Any others, Michael? Otherwise, I'll use SolarEdge as an example of why, kind of what we're looking for.
Generac was certainly a question asked as well.
I like Generac system. We are talking with one of our electricians who is willing to be a test site for it. But there's just some limitations in the current version, so that it can only get so big. It covers kind of the about half our market, but anything above, I can't remember what it was, like 10, 15, 12, 15 kilowatts, started getting, it wasn't quite there. And when I looked, they didn't have 200 amp transfers, so we couldn't back up a home. I think they have since added that with with Generac transfer switch, but it's kind of a slow transfer. It's kind of this big clunk, and it takes 10 seconds, and we're kind of hoping it's more like 1 second, less than 1 second, or 2 or 3. But it looks okay, but we like what we see in SolarEdge much more, and I'll really tell you why. They kind of talk about it as this is the smart energy platform. So what the heck is smart energy? It's really about one system, many functions. So Tesla is a battery system. Powerwall is a battery system. They have a solar inverter that they use for their installations. It's a Delta string inverter. With solar glass, they also use a Delta string inverters that don't have optimization, so we don't really like that much here in the Northwest. We really want the ability to optimize each and every module in the system. So with SolarEdge, it's a solar inverter, it's a battery inverter, battery backup. Also, you can wire an EV charger directly into it. So we just did a CEO of a major Northwest company. He wanted EV charging for his EV, and his panel was absolutely maxed out. We couldn't do anything to add any more to it. So his energy hub, we just landed SolarEdge's smart EV charger into it. Now we have EV charging. Solar, all the monitoring, including consumption of your house, that's generator compatible. And then they're coming out with a slew of add-ons to be able to do smart energy things like, hey, I want to redirect excess solar into my hot water tank, or during an outage, I want to turn off this or turn on that. All controllable right within that same mobile application. We're going to do a webinar that goes in depth on the system, including all the mobile apps and showing you lots of it. If we have time here at the end, I'll actually show you what an outage looks like for Powerwall and SolarEdge, but with questions, we're probably going to run out of time. But this is the most flexible system that we've seen. Very flexible, very scalable. So your SolarEdge really from the roof all the way through. What it does is all of your solar power comes into the inverter, and it can send it directly into the battery. So it's super efficient. Other, like Tesla, loses 1-2% of it to go get inverted at a solar inverter, and then goes to the Powerwall, gets inverted again. So you have 3 inversions to use that power versus 1 with this, where it comes in directly into the battery, and if we need it, it inverts it once to service a load in your house. So 1% isn't a ton, but 1-2% over years, that really adds up. This backup interface is equivalent to Tesla's backup gateway, and what we love is that we have this auxiliary input. So this could be a Cybertruck, this could be an F-150 hybrid, this could be a portable 240-volt generator, could be a permanently fixed generator that we can automatically start and stop, all with an integrated platform. So it's very flexible, scalable. It costs a little bit less than Tesla Powerwall system, very efficient, and it's really future-proof. They've really opened it up so that they can add additional solutions to it. I won't go into all of it, but massively scalable. Before, we really, it was really only for a small subset of a home. Now we can back up 1 200 amp service or 5 200 amp services, and we can put 50 kilowatts plus on each service. So as much solar as anybody would ever want or need, and all of that is completely automated within the system. And you have the flexibility of LG battery packs. LG has their 10 kilowatt hour pack, and we can have up to 6 of those on a 1 200 amp service. LG is coming out with a much larger pack, bigger than the current Powerwall 2, 16 kilowatt hours, so that's 96 kilowatt hours. And then you'll also have a choice, probably 2022 early, maybe late this year, of a SolarEdge battery. They actually bought a large battery manufacturer, and they're manufacturing batteries for directly as well, vertically integrated like Tesla is, where you can have up to 150 kilowatt hours. So scalability through the roof. I was actually working with an architect to design my home, a remodel, and we got to talking about it, and he's like, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So he's actually one of our test sites early on. We installed this back in September to start testing. So this is what it looks like on the wall. He's got about a 9 kilowatt system, which is completely offsets his all electric home. And his wife said, no solar without backup power. she grew up in rural Oregon and was always out of power. So everything is right there. His EV charger can be put right here, and we can wire it right into the energy hub with a completely integrated system. So we talked a little bit. Yep, fire away.
Hey, great question. You kind of addressed this earlier, but I think it's kind of key and high level. From signing a contract to installation, what are we talking about for solar? And given the supply chain issues, what about implementation?
So on the solar side, that's pretty straightforward. We're probably 6 weeks from the time you sign to when we can install it, unless you're in a jurisdiction that maybe may have some more paperwork. Maybe it needs a business permit. But generally speaking, 6 to 8 weeks for most jurisdictions. We can install the solar. And if you wanted a Powerwall system, we'd probably install the backup gateway while we're there, but we wouldn't have a Powerwall for you until Tesla gives them to us, and we don't know when you'll have one until they say it's on a truck or on a plane, it's coming, and then we'll let you know and sign you up or schedule your battery install. But I probably, your guess is as good as mine, Michael. It's sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's longer, but it's months for sure.
That's fair. And for repairs, one person want to know what's the turnaround time for repairs, if there are any?
We think that is an absolute strong spot for us. We are known as the leaders. We're not the least expensive because ongoing training. We have a dedicated, was it 3 or 4 person service team with electricians. So if you have a problem, we're on it right away. We usually resolve 96% of our service requests same day. But to get a new Powerwall, I think we just had the first one that I know of needed to be replaced. I could check to see what it was, but it was probably a matter of a week or so before we got one. So Tesla is providing replacements if one is needed. It's very, very uncommon. Of the 300 roughly that are in our portfolio, one that I know of, but I'm not in service, so.
Awesome, thank you.
I'm gonna kind of just really wrap it up there because I can't believe an hour's already gone by. But which system should you choose? If you go to A&R Solar, fill out our form. Our welcome team will get all the information that a designer would need to get you an estimate, and they will work through with you and me probably on what system is right for you. And you don't have to choose today. I think they're both great systems. They each has some of their own advantages. The big one that really comes up is people that are worried about long winter outages. That is something that without the ability to charge your batteries with some auxiliary source, I think that's huge. And that's coming, but it's not here today. Hopefully mid this year, early to mid this year, we'll have that functionality. We are installing smaller systems, and then we'll install larger systems coming up as we finish all of our validation testing on larger system installations. Um, yeah,
Very
uh,
good.
there's some two great options. Those two are by far hands down the two that I can do that I love. I love those two systems.
Question here from Lisa TJ, and I think you may have answered this in a past webinar, but it's about, it's about labor standards. It's about sourcing of the materials created that are creating these batteries. What's the latest there? What are the concerns? What's the roadmap forward? Any thoughts are welcome.
Yeah, our internally we have a team that is looking at a lot of a lot of the equity that is out there, and we are trying to only source products from companies that are sourcing products appropriately. So LG and Tesla are, I know they're doing their best. I'm not an expert on that side of things. Be happy to get the right people from A&R involved to get you more information. But suffice to say, we only want to source it from conflict-free zones. Everybody's working on trying to replace all the rare earth metals that are in it, primarily just a little bit of cobalt, but that is even recyclable. But yeah, there's definitely work that's needed in that area, and we certainly want, if we are guaranteed that LG, for instance, has it, then we're going to try primarily source from LG. If SolarEdge, so we're trying to have options so that we're not kind of giving you options as well.
Thank you. Also, Kevin wanted to know, did you allude to a SolarEdge home electrical panel, or did he and I misunderstand?
Oh, that's interesting. They have announced a solution that they're partnering with Schneider on. If you send me an email, I'll get it. I was briefed on it a year or so ago and gave feedback on it. Love the concept. Essentially, for new construction, think of it like an all-in-one meter panel plus the SolarEdge equipment. So the inverter just kind of clips in. The backup interface is all built in. So essentially, it is a solar battery backup ready home with this piece of equipment. And
Okay,
it's called
nice.
something like Smart. Oh, I can't remember. But if you search for SolarEdge, one word, and Schneider, you'll likely find the press release on it. So we're hoping to get one in as soon as possible to test it on some of our new construction sites. It looks really good. I like could definitely reduce the cost of a system and make it really look nice.
Awesome, thanks. Just a couple more questions and we can wrap it up here for you.
Sounds good.
Debbie is an architect in Washington and kind of wants to know, can this stuff all be pre-piped in and ready for an optional implementation later?
Yeah, that's a great question. Down here, we have our new construction guide link. So here we actually have I don't know how many pages it is now, 12, 14, something like that, kind of a guide where you can use that as a guide. For a battery system, we definitely recommend that you come to us. What we generally do is we get a design. We do all the design, all the engineering, then we install just the rough in for 10% of the system cost. And then we put the project on hold. And if you want to continue, then you would continue with paying your equipment deposit, and we'd put you on the schedule. Otherwise, that rough in of all of the conduit could be done. We could even, for a little bit more, rough in the gateway, which is really nice when the walls are all open. It's really easy to do all the conduit hidden then.
Very good, thank you. Another question from Phil. I'm not sure if he's still on to hear it, but we can send him the recording. He's the same person who asked about the Generac, but he's got a question about his existing solar system paired with a new one. In other words, with the grid out, how much power could be delivered to the house from a Powerwall and solar together? He's got a 9.3 kilowatt solar system and a 7.6 kilowatt inverter. So can he use all of that solar in the summer?
That's exactly it. Yep. So you would have the combined output of your solar system and your Powerwall system to run loads. So say you needed 10 kilowatts, 7.6 might come out of your solar system, and the rest would come out of the Powerwall system. So yeah, great question. So those are additive, because we have, instead of like SolarEdge, everything's all in one. So the batteries are actually connected off of the inverter here. With Tesla, the battery inverter is in here. So you have a battery inverter here and a solar inverter here. I like the all-in-one, kind of simplifies things, but both work quite well.
Very good, thank you. Another question, someone also has an existing solar system with Enphase, and they're interested, however, in the SolarEdge Energy Hub product. Are they really compatible?
Today they are not. We have asked, and SolarEdge is exploring the ability to work much like Tesla does. So we do a lot of Enphase in new construction. It's just easier to rough it in a lot of times, and those pair great with Powerwalls. But today SolarEdge will work. We'll couple AC couple to SolarEdge solar systems, but not others. So you'd really need a Powerwall system for that today. We are looking at Enphase's upcoming battery system. It's quite a bit more expensive, and it's got some pretty big limitations until later this year. But today we don't see an advantage for it over Tesla Powerwalls. So we've really been doing Tesla Powerwalls with those type of systems.
Excellent. Well, that's all the questions attendant to your slides, TJ. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. And like I said, we'll have an in-depth session on the SolarEdge Energy Hub. I've got videos that I can show you with showing what an outage looks like. It's really anticlimactic. It's with Tesla, it's almost instantaneous. With SolarEdge, you got a couple of seconds, lights go out, lights come back on, everything keeps running.
Well, very good. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for their time and thank TJ for your presentation. This recording will be provided to everyone who attended or registered. So thank you all very, very much. And thank you all for the great questions. This is A&R Solar. Please give us a call or an email if you have any further questions, and we will have future webinars. Certainly suggest anything you'd like to see presented. TJ is also about to play a great video from one of our customers who happened to capture a power outage using his Nest Cam, and watch what happens to his neighborhood when the power goes out.
Yeah, let me start it over. Watch lights are on. That would be his transformer blowing, a transformer blowing.
That's good stuff, thank you. And we did conduct a long interview chopped up into 3-minute segments with that customer who's a E manager at Amazon who's done a lot of homework on these systems. He also installed a Tesla Powerwall system for his mother-in-law in a retirement community. and tells a great story. To all of you still interested in that, I'm going to paste the link to that in the chat.
Yep, go to In Our Solar on YouTube. You'll see all of those videos and many more, including in-depth Powerwall, like go through monitoring, go through in-depth showing outages, a lot of other things.
Yeah, Phil brought up a great question. He said, hey, Comcast often goes out when the power goes out. How did Tom keep his IT stuff going? Sorry, his comms going?
So he was fine. He said that was exactly one of the drawbacks, is that after a couple hours, Comcast didn't have any backup power. So he did lose internet. But knowing Tom, he had like his cell phone as alternate internet for his home. But the Powerwall, the backup gateway, does have also has cellular. So it will connect. If it can't connect over your internet connection, it'll connect over cellular. And there's also the ability to connect to the gateway locally on your network, even if you have no internet, and you can still see what's going on. So if the easiest way is, Comcast goes out, you don't have Wi-Fi, but if you still have cellular signal. I went through a 5-day outage and I still had T-Mobile and Verizon were still working. So I could have looked at everything on my phone. It's talking to Tesla's cloud. So since the cellular modems are still connected, and I had cell signal, I could still see it without doing anything different, just using my mobile app.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to wrap it up here. TJ, thank you so much for your time, and please keep the questions coming through our website or email or phone. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you very much.